Picture this, you are watching the Dune trailer. It starts with desert winds and whispers, but a minute in you are hearing synth pulses and pounding drums. And by the end, the choir and the brass are shaking the cinema. That's not random, that's the 3-act trailer cue model. And in today's video I will show you what it is, why it works, and then I'll show you step by step how to create one yourself. And if you like cinematic music, or if you're interested in writing trailer cues yourself that get used, then hit subscribe, this is where we break it all down. But first, here's why this is a non-negotiable in trailer music. Editors need modular sections. Act 1 for setup, Act 2 for tension, and Act 3 for spectacle. And they can use these sections to cut down clips into 15-second, 30-second, or 90-second clips, or they might use your whole 2 to 3 minute song. And between these 3 acts, we need to make sure we're fading to silence and then building up into the next section. If you write songs in a pop structure, say verse, chorus, with no breaks or no silence between, that's an impossible task for an editor, or should I say it's an impossible song for an editor to use, because let's say they just want to use the chorus. Well then if you don't have any breaks between the verse and the chorus, you're going to have a few seconds of the audio tail of the verse sounds bleeding into the start of the chorus. Whereas let's say if your verse ended and then it dropped to silence and then it ramped up and boom, hit in with the chorus, that's a perfect edit point for an editor to use. And when you're writing your music, you want to be thinking about an editor. Always thinking about what can I provide the editor, what tools would they want, what songs would they want, how can I make their job to edit my music as easy as possible. And Hollywood trailers have trained the audience to expect that cinematic arc. It's kind of like storytelling. It starts with the setup, and then there's the escalation, and then there's the payoff at the end. That's why every blockbuster trailer is in this 3-act structure. And that's why when we are writing our music for trailers, we need to make sure our music also lines up with this 3-act structure. And at the end of the day, the trailer, the piece of media, is the most important. So the more things that we can sync up with the video to support the video, it's not just going to make the trailer better, but it's going to make the editor's life, who's editing the trailer, so much easier. And if an editor likes editing your music, you're much more likely to actually get your music used in that trailer in the first place. So let's jump into our DAW and build this together. Now Act 1 is all about atmosphere and intrigue. You're pulling people into the world of the movie, you're setting the scene, but you're not giving away too much. So let's go ahead and start with just a simple synth pad. Just going to make sure this all lines up. I've got a second synth pad here as well. If I hold down Alt and then click and drag, I can copy that exact same synth line to that one. So now we might actually start with the piano at the start. We're going to add in a sub-hit next, and make sure if you're using a library where the sub-hits allow us to choose the pitch of the sub, make sure you line up the sub-hits with the root note of the song, and try and keep your sub-hits in key, because especially in that low register, it's really important to not have any clashing frequencies. So if we can line up our sub-hits with our other bass sounds, we'll be a step ahead. I like this one for this one, so we're just going to go. So with some of these lower notes, I'm quantizing them right to the grid just because I want to get them nice and accurate. For something else, like say strings for example, something that's a bit more fast, a bit more pluck heavy, I might not quantize as much, just so it has a bit more human element, but I just don't want any big rhythmic clashes as well as harmonic clashes in that low end. So we've copied the sub bass hit every 8 bars now. The next thing for Act 1 is we're going to add a riser. I actually like this one, but I might bounce this onto audio and then we'll play around with it. What if we pan this, just so it has a little bit more movement, but it keeps that same whoosh kind of sound. That's it. We might automate the sync rate. What if we change this last one to a 16th note? I kind of like that. Let's go to the downers next. So let's start with our bass drum hits. We probably will line these up with the sub hits. Let's sort out that final hit. So let's start with our bass drum hits. We probably will line these up with the sub hits. Let's sort out that final hit. Let's sort out that final hit. Ding, ding, ding. A little bit louder there. What we might do is we might just copy this to the tie codes. So again, just click and drag down. Before we move on, let's add in our riser to the end. We'll come up to the whooshes. I like that one. And we make sure the end of Act 1 fades out completely before the start of Act 2. And it sounds quite restrained here, but that's okay. Editors love this. At the start, it leaves a lot of room for dialogue and other sound effects. Our music takes a bit of a backseat, but it still supports what's going on screen. Because if you go too hard too soon, your music has peaked before the story begins, and you want to make sure your music follows the arc of the story, especially in the trailer. Now for Act 2, we want to keep everything the same from Act 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all of this. Again, hold down our Alt key, and we're going to click and we're going to drag everything over there. Now what I like to do for Act 2 is I'm just going to go in here and increase the velocities. And I think our risers, let's go ahead and make these a fraction louder. Actually, same thing with our whooshes and our downers. Let's make these fractionally louder. Because again, we're building up throughout the whole of the 3 acts. Instead of the booms being every 8 bars here, we might click and drag these and we'll make them every 4 bars. Let's go ahead and add a bit more stuff. And we'll try and escalate the tension here without giving away too much of the ending. We'll still end on A, but let's consider dropping to the G. So then we've got D, B, A, D, B, G, A. Let's do that. So let's go ahead and add in some short strings. These, this synth at 2 is a little bit, there's a little bit too much going on. So we'll just keep a lot of the highs. Let's even just do something like this. Now we might just get this to ramp up in velocity a little bit more, just to really ramp up into a final hit at the end. Again, similar thing, let's pull this down, let's have this ramp up towards the end. And what we might do in the second half of this, I've got a synth bass pulse. And again, if we click and highlight all of these, we're making sure it's an octave for one another, so there's no clashing close notes in the bass register. That's important to avoid. And next thing, we're going to add in, let's just see how this sounds. We might start it nice and soft, but then gradually increase the velocity as we go on. And then in Act 3, we might double the speed. So we'll come back to the drums now. Let's do something different. Cool. So we kind of did our own thing in that first half, but then the second half we tried to line up with the slow string pulses. And if we hear, nice. So if we can add in the tom hits. I might just a little bit of a snare here we can do something with. So I've kind of got this. Something like that is what I'm thinking. Let's give it a go. We might just, again for velocity, we might bring this down. Let's highlight the first half, make this first half kind of crescendo in. Maybe at the second half we'll bring this up a little bit more. We'll get this to crescendo up to the end. So now we've kind of got this ramp up. So let's go ahead and Alt M to mute. And now we've kind of got from here. And you can kind of hear in Act 2 now how we're sort of starting to add a new section. Every sort of few bars you can hear a new sort of sound creeping in, whether it's the snare fading in from really low, or maybe the tom hits fading in from low, or the string spiccato fading in quite low every 4 to 8 bars. This whole section of Act 2 is just about steady escalation. Now we're kind of ramping up a little bit, but we're not going too intense. And editors regularly use Act 2 of a trailer music song for things like montages, fight scenes, or rapid fire visuals. If the build up of your Act 2 feels really static, then the energy dies. But you also don't want to go too hard because you want to leave Act 3 somewhere to go. So in Act 2, you build up the intensity, but you don't fully go all out. And if this video is helping you out, consider subscribing below. I've got a lot more trailer music deep dives coming your way very soon. And now for the payoff. Act 3 is where we unleash everything. We'll do a similar thing as we did before, but now we've got more to copy over. We'll highlight all of this, copy it over, add in one more little bit of D right at the end, just for say 1 bar. And we'll explain more when we get there. All right, let's delete the percussion because we're going to start that again. And let's come into our string, increase the velocity all the way up. We're going to do the same thing right at the end. We're going to ramp up to the end. Let's enlarge this bit. Boom. So synth bass, and again, we're just going to make everything just punch a lot harder in this final bit. Let's enlarge this bit. And again, this pedal note, we're going to have this every bar. So we're just going to double the speed of these. Now let's get this string line. Now one thing we will do before we look at brass, we do have a synth pluck effect here. What we're going to do is we're going to actually copy the string line in here as well. This is quite a bit loud. So we'll come in, let's do something with the brass. We can actually go Alright, some of those chords definitely did not work, so let's come back and touch these up. So that C at the end definitely did not work, and this G didn't work either. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to double check where we are with the chords. So this one sounded a bit muddy. So B to F, that one sounds good. Let's say go A there as well. That'll be a bit too clashing. Let's take this down to G to E. Brass, let's take down to the root note. So what I was trying to avoid there was I could see that I had some low G notes in the synth, but then I was having some low A's and some low F sharps, and that's like a semitone and a couple of semitones difference in the bass, and that'll sound really muddy really quick. So I try and give a bit more space to these bass notes. If I'm going to have, let's say, if I'm not going to have the same notes, I want to make sure I've got a little bit of space, or if I can, I'll create a chord, or I'll use the same notes as a chord. So you can see, for example, here in this note, from bar 51 to 53, I've actually kind of got a D major chord. So I've got the D in the bass, but then on the brass, I'm kind of going D, A, and then back down to the F sharp here, when I'm also going down to the, what is that? The B. But this also works because the F sharp in here is note 5 in a B scale. So I've kind of got B and F sharp, and that's this quite beautiful sound. So I'm trying to sort of match those where I can. I'm also using Albion 1 on this one, but if you have French horns or trumpets, you'll use a bit more of a higher up register. I might leave these out for the first half, but I'll bring them in the second half, just so we're kind of really taking it up to another gear in that second half. We definitely need to have a little bit of a gap in here, otherwise our horn players cannot breathe. Boom, right in there. Yeah, these need a bit of a track delay because they're a little late. So let's try 40 milliseconds. Let's just come back to our percussion. Now I'm thinking. Nice. Bam, bam, ba-dam, bow. Let's just make this hit, not that one, this one, a little bit up. Now what we might do, I haven't included it here, but I might, let's double this one for a second, duplicate, just in this final section. I might add in, this is just personal preference, but I really like this instrument. Let's just put this as Act 3. We'll just bring it into Act 3 stuff. Now, where is it? Spitfire, Cymbalom. Now, I really like this sound, and I know Thomas Bergerson uses this kind of sound. I don't know if he uses this sample library or if he has a different one, but I know he uses this a lot in some of his music. Here we go. So let's see how this sounds. We'll just have a big final hit just so the editor can just come in at the end and just cut a few things there. Movie coming out this spring 2026. Let's add in a bit more. I've got some cymbal hits. Alright, trailer hits, we're almost there. So I've got this, and again, if we're using a trailer hits from a library that we can choose the pitch on, definitely choose the key of your song. I kind of like that one. We might actually use a few, so what we're going to do, we'll use that one. Damn, that has a nice punch, let's add that. So what we're going to do, we're going to bounce these as audio, separate, and with current settings. We'll do the same in this other one, and we'll just line these up to the start. Let's just make this a nice little whoosh. Let's just get these both with the same tail end, just for consistency. So now we have, I'll just pull down the second.
Now we might actually come in at the end and we might get these trailer hits lining up with that bit too. So we'll come in and we'll say, let's just come right in here. And in these other ones, we're going to delete the lead up, pull these here. So a really tiny quick fade in, and then have a thing there like that, go like that, oh, go like that, and then go like that. Now we could also automate the volume, so instead of bam, bam, ba-dam, bam, what if we go bam, dun, 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 or dun, 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 dun. Let's try that. So right now we're at volume 1. Let's just go down 1 for these ones, down 2 here. Now final touch here, we're going to add in the choir sustain. For these choir sustains, I might actually get them to just follow the bass. So we're going. And for these ones here, I'm just using the Lacrimosa choir from ATO. Alright, here we go. Now I actually like these quantized chord notes. Might cut these down to half just so there's even more of a space between. Now a few things I might do here. This piano in this final bit, I think we might actually just get rid of it, and we might just get this following the same notes down here. But let's of course pull these up. And we also might match these synth hits, I say synth hits, we're just going to try and match the rhythm of the other parts from the vocals, just to give a little bit more breathing room. And remember the contrast of the song when we cap out in Act 3 right at the top, it's not just about playing everything really loud, it's also about contrast and space. Because remember, if we have something really loud and if we have something a little bit softer, that volume jump from soft to loud is going to make that loud thing sound really, like it's going to make it sound 10 times louder. So if we can add in those sort of little moments here and there throughout that final act, it's just going to slam home hard 10 times harder. And if we also do things, for example, spread the choir and the brass across different octaves, that just makes everything sound a little bit more smoother and less muddy. Same thing with the choir and the synths, how they're also playing the same notes. But another thing too is the percussion. Although we've kind of got those low bass drum and those low taiko and tom hits doing their sort of hits here and there, matching up with the low string lines and the low synth bass pulses, we've got our treble hits coming in every 4 bars. They're coming in at the end, but you know, they're in Act 3, it's in bar 1, bar 5, bar 9, and then bar 13 and 17 right at the end of that final section. And this just kind of creates this sort of 4-bar rolling intensity that editors love just cutting montages to. We're almost done, but one final thing we're going to do is we're going to use some of the sounds in here just for a big final hit at the end as a stinger. You'll often see these in trailers where the movie parts of the trailer itself have already happened, and this is right at the end. They might just have a big hit and then it opens up in the trailer with maybe the movie release date or some credits, you know, directed by Christopher Nolan, etc., etc. So the trailer finishes, dun 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 dun, boosh, coming out September 25. But if we go ahead and make that ourselves rather than leaving that up to the editor, that's going to be something that they'll love, because they'll see that right at the end of the song and they'll just be like, perfect, that's a nit, that's a sting. Just copy paste, click it in, boom, done. And again, we are trying to provide tools for the editor to use. So rather than give the editor just the 3 acts, this extra stinger is giving them another tool that they can use. Just, you know, if they're cutting the trailer and they just want one big final hit at the end, and then panning to the movie release date with a little bit of backdrop. If we can be one step ahead and already provide that for them so the editor doesn't have to go and sort in through stems and try and create their own hits, that's going to be a big plus. So we're going to copy this bass hit along. We're going to copy our 2 trailer hits. I think I need a bit more. Yep. Let's copy this cymbal hit. We might not use. What about the louder one? Yeah, we might use that. Let's copy the downer over here too. We might just make this a little louder. We'll add in our whoosh. I need 16th notes. There we go. Now we also might copy in our signature sound. What we might do, I like the sound, but I don't like those tremolo bits in this final bit, so I might just duplicate it and then just delete these other ones. And then in this second one, let's just call this end. I might just delete the plugins. What about auto pan? What one? Auto pan. Something like that. And let's fade it out a bit quicker. Nice. So let's go back and listen to this now, and hopefully with these 3 acts we're hearing this ramp up in intensity, all the way from setting the scene in Act 1 to providing a bit more tension in Act 2 to then in Act 3 bringing everything home and really hitting hard, and then ending with that final stinger at the end. Doesn't sound too bad. But a good thing I just noticed with this song is we've actually ended up just looking at the time code under the 2-minute mark. So now that we've got this whole song written, if we were to then go through and mix and master the whole thing, we even then would still probably be under 2 minutes if we're counting in all of those reverb tails as well, and potentially having to add in an extra bar or two between sections just to compensate for those tails. But you know, under 2 minutes, a minute 50, a minute 55, we're providing 3 acts of music across 3 different intensities, and we're providing that end sting. That's a lot of value that you're providing with your trailer music, and you're giving the editor lots of options for things to use. They might not use all 3 acts of your song. They might just use act 1 of your song, act 2 of someone else's, and act 3 of someone else's entirely. They also might use just the first part of your act 1 with the second part of act 1 of someone else's. Quite often editors will piece together lots of songs from different composers. They might not use the whole song for the full thing, but if they do, you're providing your song with all of those tools that they might need. If they wanted to have an act 1 that sets the scene, brings the listeners in, act 2 that increases the intensity a bit more, and act 3 that really brings it home hard, and then a stinger at the end that they can just cut the movie release date to, or whatever it is they want. Now my first trailer cue completely flopped because I decided it would be a good idea to try and layer percussion and brass in 5th gear high velocities all the way from act 1. And of course the library sent this back as unusable. Compare that with my recent song Rise of the Immortals. That starts with a few big hits just to capture attention, but then in act 1, just a few seconds later, it slowly starts in, and then in act 2 it builds up, and then in act 3 it explodes up even more. And I'll show you a few audio examples of that now. So here's your roadmap: Act 1 atmosphere, Act 2 momentum, Act 3 spectacle. This structure isn't just theory, it's the industry standard. So master it and make your music more cuttable, more editable, more sync friendly, and by doing so you'll make sure your music lands more placements. This is the first video in my YouTube series on trailer music structure and form. So if you would like to dive deeper into how to write cinematic cues like this that get used, then click here for the full playlist. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.